Hey everyone, my name is Timmy Gobbles, and today I'm going to kind of go through making another one of these games. First, we're going to look at the art assets. I got a little lazy this round and just grabbed a pack from Kenney. And so I picked this food-based one. I think it's called Food Platformer. But it's got a little bottle of some juice or something. The game I'm trying to emulate is Jetpack Joyride. So I thought, well, okay, this kind of looks like a bottle of hot sauce. And I can kind of stitch it together in GIMP, and I can try to make the bottle's open state and the bottle's closed state, so that when it's like emitting its sauce and pushing it up into the air, I can have the bottle open and like emitting some particles. And then when it's corked, it'll be corked when you're not emitting particles. So that was kind of my idea with that. All right, so now that I got the art, I got to import it into my game. And the thing about pixel packs is you need to make a tile map with them to use them effectively, because it's basically just a big image with a lot of little images on it. So by using a tile map, we can break up that big image into a bunch of more workable images and use that kind of like a palette. And so I have a little confusion here. I thought they were 16 by 16 pixels, but they're actually 18 by 18 pixels on the tile, on the pack. I guess it calls it a tile map. What did I even call it? A pixel pack? What are pictures? Just a bunch of pixels. All right, so as the theme is food, a lot of these tiles are like a kind of cake. So there's this brown cake and kind of like a pink layered cake maybe, with a little bit of frosting on top. And you can see it's very well thought out. They kind of have, like, if you're building a terrain or something, all the different situations where you would want to have the border. Like on the edge of a cliff, right? You're going to need the border on the cliff, but if you were to use that on like a solid ground, it's going to look like there's a bunch of gaps on it. Okay, so, and part of the neat thing about the tile map node is you can actually add collision on it. And I don't want my hot sauce bottle to fall through the ground, so I'm going to give everything collision just to be sure. Right now, I was trying to come up with images I could use for emitting particles and stuff. And I ended up just doing this like blurry spear thing. And just for fun, I made 3 colors. I got the red, green, and blue. I don't think I ended up using all of them, but I made them. So, all right, so I'm just gonna start making the main scenes. And so I need the world, a player, and I'm working on the player right now. So for the player, I need a couple pieces. I need a collision and the bottle. And I hadn't decided yet whether or not I wanted a character like the bottle was attached to. And so with the bottle, I want it to be able to kind of have a toggle state for whether it's emitting or not. That way, when it's really easy to flip-flop it. And so here I'm trying out those green little orbs that I made on GIMP. And they look okay, but so one of the limitations with making an HTML5 game is, I can't have like fluid physics, and I can't have emitting particles, and there's a lot of limitations to it. So sometimes you kind of have to work around it. All right, what do we got going on here? I'm trying to decide how I want the player to move. And I think I start out with a character body, which can do move and slide, but I end up shifting it to a rigid body, which is more based for collisions and stuff. All right, so we're looking at the tile map, and I want to have a ground that my player When, when they land on the ground, that's okay. That's part of the game. This isn't the Flappy Pig game where if you touch the ground, you die. All right, so so shoot is going to be the space bar. When I'm holding the space bar down, my character is going to be emitting, and when you let go of the space bar, it's not going to emit. So those are the two states that I'm going to be bouncing between. And so if we're emitting, we want our velocity to be negative, because remember, down is positive and up is negative. And the other thing I want is I don't want it to fly off of the screen. So I end up putting in a little calculation where the closer you are to the top of the screen, the less upward velocity you have until it's at about 0. All right, so there's the floor, and I'm kind of figuring out how to make a floor that, see, this is what I was talking about with the different floor tiles. You can see kind of the gaps there, and I'm playing around with, there's a randomize button, so you can take a selection from the tile map and drag out a shape, and it'll fill it randomly. Another thing I get gummed up a lot is I'll have the erase button toggled on, and I'll be like trying to draw a shape and frantically trying every button but the erase button. And then I figure out, oh, it's because the game engine thinks I want to erase and not, place a tile. Okay, so I want the ground to move to the left. I want to make an endless mission, right? So I come up with some constants. These are things that, I'll have to adjust over time. But when the game starts, I don't want it to move immediately. Now, if I'm making an endless mission, I need to know how to place tiles on the tile map through code. So I just kind of looked that up. All right, so now we're looking at the enemies. So what is an enemy in this game? It's going to be one of like 5 or 6 different food pictures that fly across the screen, and your goal is to not hit them. So how do I choose? So if I have my big tile map, I want to look at the region that composes of that different food element. So with the enemy scene, I want to be able, when I spawn an enemy, I wanted to randomly pick one of the different food options. And so this is where I'm kind of working out how to do that. So see, I have like a cheeseburger region selected. And what I end up doing is I make a dictionary of, I just kind of come up with the names like pancake, sandwich, sausage. And then I have a rectangle. A rectangle consists of 2 X's and 2 Y's. And so I just manually go through each of the different food items and see what that rectangle looks like. And then I put that in my dictionary. So now that I have that dictionary, and I'm going to make a list of those names as well. So when I call one of the names, and I can pass that into the dictionary, and it'll return the rectangle of the region of that tile map that I want to have be the picture of the enemy. A little convoluted, but sometimes you gotta get a little finicky. So there we go. Look at them cycling through the different foods randomly. Or pseudo randomly. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, there's nothing really random. Okay, so now we're looking at rotations. Or I'm trying to get the objects to move across the screen. So I'm gonna need some move speed. And when I spawn one, later on, I end up scaling that move speed based on the score. So they go a little faster as the game goes longer. Okay, so now how does the game know that a collision happened when you use the move and collide function? So I gotta look that up. And I get a little clumsied on that. So if, here we are with the spawn food enemy in world. So I have a timer in the physics update. Is it update? Yeah, so in world script in the physics, on the physics tick, I add to a time variable, and then when that time variable is large enough, I'll spawn a new piece of food at a random height at a specified X, like off the screen, and with a random rotation and a random, we went through with the tile map, the random food picture. All right, and then I decide, you know what, the food's a little small. Let's make it a little bigger. And that looks a little better. So the food, the hot sauce bottle is a little small, but I kind of think that's okay because the real focus is avoiding the big lumps of food thrown at you. I could make it a little bigger, but then, I might have to play with the difficulty of the game if I did make it bigger. I kind of liked how small it was. So I ended up switching player to rigid body, which I don't know if that did me any good. I was having an issue where the collisions weren't happening fast enough. And what the solution ended up being was basically to turn collision off on the food. Basically, for collisions, there's two kind of mask settings. One is the bodies that your object sees, and one is for the bodies that can see your object, or like the layer that sees your object. All right, so what happened when I was recording this is a lot of the time I wasn't recording it, and I got through a lot. Specifically, I added background music, some sound effects, and I fixed the collisions. And so now here we're working on more juice. I want to put some faces on these bits of food. They look kind of boring as just, base pieces of food flying across the screen. So we're going to give them some eyes, and the eyes are going to have two states, open and closed. So like if the food's just floating around having a good day, it's going to be open. And if it collides into the player or, I'm removing it from the screen, it's going to have like a little ouch face. We also need the mouth. The mouth is going to have, I think, 3 states. So a smile, a surprise, and a eh. Now I got to figure out how to change all that. And I think my idea was, so I instantiate an enemy scene on it just so I can get the positioning and size right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an animation player to basically change the face. And the animation player is really powerful. It's kind of like the lazy person's coding. So you make a new animation, and then on the track, you can add keyframes for like a whole ton of stuff. You can add keyframes for calling functions, or like pretty much anything that's in the scene that you can change in the editor, you can end up adding to the animation track. So I'm going to be adding, you can even like choose what texture, right? So I'm going to be choosing the texture for the eyes and the mouth. And I'm also, when I want to frown, all I have to do is change the scale for the Y value of that sprite and make it -1 instead of 1. And that'll make it a frown instead of a smile. Now, when the eyes are closed, I didn't draw it that thick, so I end up increasing the scale. So when I do that, I'm going to have to go through the animation player and have like a reset pose for all the other animations so that the eyes aren't like super big in the Y value. There we go. Look at that. All the food has a bunch of faces now. Okay, so now we need to tell all our other scripts how to use this face component, specifically in the enemy. And I forgot how to spell surprise, so I had to look that up. Every now and then there's like a super obvious word like quirk or surprise, and I just completely whiff on spelling it. So here we go. We gotta tell the score to when you beat your high score, all the food that's on the screen is going to make a surprise face, like, whoa, they did it. And when game over, or when the food smashes into the side of the screen, they're going to make like an ouch face and then disappear to a bunch of bits. So one of the issues with that high score feature was I needed to add another Boolean variable to say that you've completed the high score, and then on a new game that resets, because otherwise everything would make a surprise face until like the end of the game. All right, so I think, are we done with faces yet? Nope, still working on that logic for that. You know, I think I forgot to talk about how I made the countdown, or am I doing that now? Oh yeah, okay. So when you start a new game, I wanted to make a countdown out of the food bits. So I'm gonna very crudely draw the numbers 3, 2, and 1 with, I think this is cheese. So 3 is made out of cheese. And what's next? It looks a little blurry. I probably had the interpolation on for that. It's unfortunate. And it looks like 2 is gonna be made out of cake. I kind of forgot how to make a 2, so that was fun. Ended up just making a 3 again. It's like, no, what are you doing? We're trying to make a 2 here. All right, that kind of looks like a 2. It's good enough. And then, 1's pretty easy. I could have made it fancy, but, I just wanted it just a big line up and down. And I think that conveys the message. This is a 1. And so 1s are made out of cake, obviously. All right, very creative names. Countdown, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and you know what? What we're using again is the animation player, and we can add this to the HUD. And so the HUD will have a 3-second animation, and at 0, it has that 3, and at 2, it's going to be a 1, and at 1, it's going to, 2, it's going to be a 2, I guess. I got that all mixed up. 0 is a 3, 1's a 2, 2 is a 1, and then at 3 it's 0. So here we go. And I added some pings, little ping noises. I think that looks pretty good. It's not perfect. So we're going to add that into the logic so that our game does it when we want it to and makes it go away when we don't want it there. And there's a bit of finagling with that. What I end up doing, so at 3 seconds, it's a little slow. So I ended up moving it at 2 times speed. Now here I'm running into an issue. I've noticed that my logic allows me to keep hitting spacebar when it's counting down, and it will repeatedly continue to make that, it'll repeatedly restart the counter. So I need to come up with a new Boolean that says, or no, actually, I think I look at whether or not the countdown is playing. So I have a game timer in the world scene that counts down when the game starts. In the background, you don't see it doing it. So if it's playing, then you hitting the spacebar doesn't do anything. I added a little bit of easing to the numbers, so they get a little bigger, and then they switch. What is next? Oh, the background. You know what? I love it when you have like a little background that moves as the game moves. And I had a lot of trouble figuring out how to do that. One of the issues was I wanted to use the tile map so I could just draw some cakes with some little lollipops and drinks on it. But I didn't know how to do that. And what I really didn't want to do was have to do that in GIMP. I wanted to just use the tile map in Godot to do that, because it would just take a lot longer to do it in GIMP. It probably wouldn't be that bad. But, I thought this was better. Now, the parallax background has a variable called scroll offset. And when I was reading the description of that variable, I was led to believe that that was the variable you needed to change if you weren't using a camera. So I'm not using a camera in this because the character doesn't move along the x-axis. They're always at a fixed x value, horizontal value. So what I want to do is have the parallax move itself and as a function of time. And what I couldn't figure out is why I couldn't change this scroll value, scroll offset. And so one of the ways you can check to see if your code's doing is what you want it to do is have it print to the output the variable that you're trying to change. And so if you see here, the variable wasn't changing when I was using a plus equals operator on it. And so what I ended up figuring out is that offset, that scroll offset is just at a fixed value. It's not something you need to be moving around. What you actually want to move around, I guess we'll get to it. So here I ended up putting those 3s on the screen because I thought, oh, maybe the tile map just doesn't work with this node. So I'll just try putting a sprite there and that should work. And it wasn't working. And I'm trying to see if there's any code that's moving this node, and I end up just deleting it and remaking it. And reattaching the script and making sure all the settings were right on it, reattaching all those nodes, going nuts over what to do about it. And then finally, I just asked the Godot Discord, and then, someone helped me along with that, and I probably fixed the video so it shows that. So there we go. It's moving. We just need to, I just need to adjust what speed, and I add a little extra padding because if you noticed with the Flappy Pig game, you can see the clouds spawning, and it doesn't look great. You want the clouds to spawn off the screen. So I ended up making it about maybe 1.2 times the length of the screen just to give it a little extra room. Now I want a little background sky, so I end up using this weird like purpley looking thing, and I wasn't too happy with it, but sometimes you got to work with what you got. All right, and that started moving, so I had to turn its scroll speed to 0. I didn't want the background image to move. And I thought the bottles that were emitting were a little too large, so I made them a little smaller, and I tightened up the hitbox on the player. And I don't even know what's going on here. Might just be testing the game out to make sure how it looks. But yeah, it looks okay. It's doing its thing. Oh, you know what? The scores were a little hard to see because of all the background clutter. So I end up making a little gray gradient sprite or PNG, and the score and the message are just going to sit on top of those. And I don't want the message one to display while the message is hidden. So now it's a little easier to see those scores at the top. You can still see the stuff behind them. It's just it gives more emphasis to the scores, to those labels. And here I go trying to mess with this one. And it's still on the screen. We have to tell it to go away. Whenever we change that message, I just do Control F, type in message, and then go line by line until you find it. And it's time. Here's the finished product. That's what it looks like. And now I just need to export it and throw it on itch. All right, so it's time to export, which means I need to make sure I have the export templates so the game knows how to do that. And I already had them from doing Flappy Pig. I didn't know I could still use them, so I ended up re-importing them. And I think I ended up doing it twice too. There was a checkbox on the itch page about headers that I didn't have selected. So I ended up going through this process a couple times because I kept forgetting to select it when I would import my game onto itch. All right, and now it's on itch and it's playable. You can find it if you go to my itch page, timmygopples.itch.io. Feel free to try it out, leave a comment if you like. All right, so I had a lot of fun with this project, and it's not my own art, but I think it fits with what I tried to do pretty well. For the next project, if anybody has a request, please feel free to leave a comment, and if it's not too ambitious, I'll gladly take a stab at it. The next video is going to be making some incremental improvements to this game. There's a couple features that I want to implement, mainly like a start menu and maybe a settings menu, just to kind of figure out how those things kind of work. And I also want to make a little more functionality for the player. Like a friend suggested, maybe when you're spitting out hot sauce and there's a piece of food below you, maybe it like dyes that food green or something like that. And also adding maybe not like new kinds of enemies, but maybe like things you would want to collide with, like more points, or I was thinking maybe like a power up that clears all the food that's there off. Maybe it could be like a big broom that goes across the screen and just wipes it all out. And yeah, but otherwise, like I'm happy with how it came out, and I look forward to making the next one. All right, and with that, I'll see you guys next time.